Morning, Richard. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Stephen. How are you? How are you?
I'm doing well. I think this is episode 9, right? Episode 9 of our Prefecture Go Academy podcast.
Yes.
And today we are talking about transportation and medical in our circular city. And it's a pretty exciting one as well. Again, we're not experts at these things. We don't claim to be experts. We're doing a high level view of a lot of different topics, and we love to hear your comments throughout the podcast, and also comment on our website as well. So let's get to it, Richard. So transportation and medical, two different topics today, and I wanted to get your opinion or your view of what you're looking at the circular city, the future of transportation inside of it.
Okay. We talked about Kaylee and having AI for the populace of the city, and it takes all the information from as we discussed last week for agriculture and food and water. What it provides and what Kaylee would provide. All the information that the populace puts into Kaylee would also be for transportation, and we have a autonomous pods transportation system, like it's almost like public transportation system, and the information you put in your work travel, your leisure travel, what you like to, how you like to commute and stuff is put in the system, and the system knows and says, and when we get into next week, when we talk about, this is why the last part of the podcast, we'll be talking about construction. You need to know this information to construct. So of a populace of say 15,000, you would create so many, so you're lowering the sustainability, and you're not creating an overabundance of things just sitting around, which saves energy. You're creating just enough to sustain the 15,000 of their travels and how they do it. And like we said in the last podcasts, there's a separation between needs and wants. So these are just based on your needs of transportation for work and for productivity and everything you need to do, separate from your needs and wants and leisure. So that's another discussion. But she takes all that information, she creates, and then in our system we have autonomous pods that use GPS, and also still up in the air in question. We also have drones that fly in the air, and also does transport and commercial stuff. But what will help the sustainability is if you need to travel outside of the circular city, there's a bunch of futurist systems that have a system where the actual drones magnetize on top of the pods, and it'll carry you over rough terrain, water, almost like a ferry to the other city. And what that does, in my view, in my design, is it helps with sustainability, because you don't have if you just have a flying vehicle and you're using it not for flight, it's a waste of that energy if it's not going to fly. So you have the flying drones doing other things like surveillance, security. It can manage the crops, but when it's not, it can be multi-use. It can be used for transport. Same thing with the ground pods. The ground pods we use for transportation, but when it's not in use, it's also the same ones that use transport for commercial, delivering the food, delivering products, and also delivering supplies and stuff. So sort of like a all-in-one kind of thing. So that's my view on it. And like I said, and it's all developed from the information that the populace puts in.
And I think you indicate to me, with the pods, that they can be, one that's a singular pod, or they can connect together and make themselves into like 2 or 3, like a train. I believe you also said to me that you wanted to have them color coded, so they would have an LED rope light, if you will, that says, hey, these are people. It's blue. If it's an emergency, it's red. If it's something that's being transferred, that's goods. It might be green, so that people know what those specific pods are being used for, or the system knows what those pods are being used for. Which I think is kind of neat. It builds a coding for everybody to recognize, oh, okay, well they're that's carrying food, well this one's carrying those types of maybe a chemical or something that you need to be protective of or whatever. So the like to use a lot of references when we have these conversations. I and of course I don't want to have any spoiler alerts for anybody, but Westworld, I mentioned, they have something similar that the pod runs on the ground, or also can be a flying vehicle as well. It's all one kind of scenario, at least in some of the ones that I've watched. When it comes down to like this, you're talking about having a drone that actually adds to the pod, right, to kind of give it lift, versus it being something that already is built in a singular fashion. So, and of course, as we go along, there'll be drawings of these things, which we're excited to present at some point in the future, as we start to evolve some of these stories out.
Yeah, and like I said, we'd like your help with this. Where do you see the design? It kind of helps us with the story if it's your design too. So we want to put some of your designs. And the way that, like I said, and the way the Go philosophy works for us, for the circular city, for the fictitious gaming city, is like I said, go in Japanese means 5, and I use the concept of having the top 5, and it's not static, it's fluid. The top 5 most popular whatever widget at that time that sustains the city, and that comes from data that the populace puts in. And since it's real time, the top 5 of whatever the city has at the time that's the most popular, like I said, it isn't static. In 1 month or 2 months, you have new information that puts in city. One of those would drop off and a new system would come in, and that's how you can sustain a city by not creating overabundance of things just sitting around, kind of thing.
Right.
So that's the whole Go philosophy. So like I said, we'll put our 5 that we think is in the system, but as we build an audience, you put yours, and then the populace puts their information in and go, oh, okay, this is a newer 5, this is a better. So the least 5 gets dropped, and the top, and a new 5, a new widget or whatever, this asset or innovation gets put in our city. And that becomes the new standard, like I said in that.
So let's go to the flying part for a minute, right? We talk about flying cars. Everyone wants a flying car. They think it's the coolest thing in the world. And we've seen some cool things out there. There's this guy that has this, I know I sent you a video. The viewers may not have seen this, of course, but like, it's a singular seat vehicle that looks like a big H that goes up in the air, and it uses, huge, strong engines, or fan engines that actually lift it. It's pretty neat. You don't need a license to fly it. You just need to take some courses as far as managing it. And that puts me in a whole scary new world, of course, because I don't think we should ever have flying cars. We could barely drive on the ground properly, let alone have flying cars. Yeah. But for argument's sake, as we have autonomous vehicles, and autonomous type machines, maybe flying cars are a possibility. But in our discussions that we've had, you said to me, Richard, there's no point to a flying car. The only reason why you should have a flying car maybe is so you're going over a large terrain like water, mountains, things like this, to make it more efficient. But other than that, do we really need flying cars? Is it a huge risk for us to even have, as human beings, even have that as an option?
Yeah, and this is new to me because it's a new change for me, because growing up with the Jetsons and all this future stuff in the 70s, all I wanted was a flying car. And like I said, in the last 6 months, as I'm doing more research on what we're doing in development. There's a couple of people on, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and maybe Elon Musk, but I'm not sure. But they all talk about how first you have to separate as a
Mhm.
mass transit, like a drone taking you up in the air, public transportation, or a mass transit type situation.
Mhm.
Flying cars does make sense in certain situations, but
Yeah.
since we're all, like I said, like for Gen X people, I want my own car, I want to drive it. Having my own personal flying vehicle and everybody else having their own individual flying car doesn't make sense cost wise and efficiency wise, and and the whole green energy. It's not. I don't think it's green, obviously. So yeah, so that part. And Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about how whatever you can do on the ground efficiently, if you can travel at 100 miles per hour, or that mag loop, or whatever Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos is doing, transportation on the ground. The whole point of, like I said, the whole needing to travel, if I need to go from here to New York, it's whether I'm in the air or on the ground, as long as I'm doing it fast, as long as I can get there in 30 minutes, it doesn't matter to me how I get there. And it's more efficient being on the ground and more cost effective to be on the ground. So yeah, so like I said, do we need individual? So the question is, we're asking, do you need individual flying vehicles, or
Do we need?
is the mass autonomous? And like, so we're talking, you're not actually driving yourself. It's just, if it's autonomous and you can reduce the accidents, and having GPS and AI and stuff controlling it, as long as it's not done by humans, it could be safe. But is it efficient? Is it green? And is it cost effective?
Right.
It's supposed to be on the ground. So yeah.
I think we go back to the mentality for a moment of, we'll say gearhead. We'll get into that in a minute on the part of our transportation. But like, we all feel like we have to have individualism. We need to have our own car, our own personal transportation, because we want the independence and flexibility to go when we want to go and how we want to go. And in the future, that doesn't become a really sustainable solution, as there's more people, realistic future. It's not as sustainable because you have more and more people, more and more people are taking up space, more and more people need to travel and move. And so, to your point, efficiency of getting from point A to point B, a train's more efficient than a singular vehicle. A plane is more efficient than a singular flying vehicle, even if it's a helicopter. So, I mean, it's something that needs to be, looked at as a grounding for transportation, when we improve. However, if we go back a little bit in the efficiency, let's talk about sailing just for a second. When folks came from Europe to, Americas, it started off being slow. What was it? 6 months, 3 months, and it starts to get slower. Then we are shorter, the vehicles become faster, whatever they are. Then we have airplanes. Then we make the planes faster. So the shorter amount of time allows us to have quicker communication with other humans, or other people as we go from point A to point B. I'm excited for some of these hyperloops ideas and some of these high-speed trains. I'm really excited about that, because I feel that a lot of transportation that we do is within 600 miles of where we are. It's never really that far away, except for people that travel globally or across the country. There is a portion, but the majority of the population stays when their own little region for the most part. So that kind of comes back down to the conversation: what's needs and wants.
Another question I never bring up is when we talk about efficiency and fast. Once the world becomes more automated and AI, and is there less need for urgency? So the question is, why would I need to travel from, as far as needs, why would I need to travel from Florida to New York in 30 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
if everything's already, I mean, like I said, unless it's an emergency or, like that, I don't see the, so you have to ask that question. What's the, we're all trying to get to somewhere fast to be more efficient, to be more, when you're working on a project. But if AI is going to take care of some of that, why do I need to get from Tampa to St. Pete faster than I normally do now? If things are, if things are going to be more, efficient technology wise, what would be the necessity except for like human nature? I want to get past this traffic. Yeah, so.
Right. I mean, human nature is to do things faster. I mean, at least American human nature will say, but also productivity. You think about during the work week, if you have to travel for work, for business, in the middle of the day, you want to get from point A to point D as fast as you quickly can because you want to make as much money as you can. And as we end up with more autonomous type vehicles or autonomous type travel, that allows the person that's, would normally be driving to be able to do other things besides pay attention to the road 100%, which is an important, aspect of going from need to want. You need to get from point A to point B, and you also need to get certain things accomplished while you're doing it. Well, now we have the ability to do that, which brings us to the topic of the reluctancy for folks to go into the realm of utilizing technology for travel, meaning autonomous vehicles. So I know we always have this discussion of how old is Steven's truck and why I don't like tech in my car. I think a lot of folks can feel the pain point now with that when it comes to not having as many microchips during, after this pandemic is starting to subside to a certain degree. But also, some folks don't feel that they need to have an autonomous vehicle. Some folks aren't comfortable with having autonomous vehicles. Some people aren't even comfortable having some of the computers inside their vehicle, period. They'd rather, they like some of the bells and whistles, they like the electronics, but there's a certain point where, they get a little irritated that there's so many hoops to go through just to do something simple, and it would just be better not to have the thing to begin with. That's me. So being a tech guy, that's an odd thing to say, but when it comes to driving, that's how I feel about it. And I know there's many other people probably feel the same way. We like to know who they are, but how do you feel about that? Your opinion on people's reluctance to either change with technology in this transportation space, or also, be adaptive to it.
That's a hard one because, like I said, being Gen X, we were some give credit to the millennials, but we're the ones that went from appreciating analog and appreciating digital at the same time. Kind of that balance. We're in that balance. So I have and like I said, I noticed that the first time, and this is back in the 80s when I had a friend who had a sports car that actually talked. And that was like the newest thing. It was the robotic synthesized voice, but it says your door is ajar. And and then by the 90s it was a female or a male's voice. But that was like the first thing. And then I noticed the technology even back in the 80s or 90s when I had one of my first cars was a Saab. And a buddy of mine from New York, he was a mechanic. This was back when I was in the military, in the Air Force, and I was telling him that I was going to get my oil change for $70. And back then, so $70, I can do it myself. And he realized that the technology that even back then, he didn't have the right metric tools for it. He didn't know where the oil pan was. He said, no wonder why they're charging you $70-$80 for this. Because at that time, the technology had changed to where you can do it more yourself, as opposed to now they're more metric and computerized kind of thing. So that's where it's turned. And now we're going from the technology of the cars we have now to autonomous vehicles.
Right.
Now you have to have autonomous and then electric cars. That's another. So you have both of those technologies coming in. Now you have to have new. And that's what that's what we want to do at the Prefecture Academy is teach that the next generation of vocational electric car mechanics and autonomous vehicle mechanics. So,
Yeah, going back to a previous podcast, not knowing what the jobs are that may be in the future,
yeah.
I went to get a battery for a car recently, and it was just old enough that I didn't have an issue. But the person at AutoZone that sold me the battery said if it was X, Y, and Z year, I would have to have a specialist. Now I'm like flipping, it's like, hey, I got to change a battery. It's like the simplest thing in the world. But here, if you take the power off the battery, it messes up the computer. It could break the computer. And now all of a sudden the car doesn't work right. And it doesn't, the engine doesn't tune right and all these things. And I'm like, I had no idea that the most simplest task now is going to require a specialist. Electric cars obviously require a specialist because we start getting into things that, most people don't understand at all, and then once we enter in the autonomous vehicles, we're dealing with sensors and things that, if you don't know what you're doing, that could be very bad, down the road. So, that's sort of, rides into our next topic, immersion. So I think it was immersion in virtual environments. That comes by, we were saying needs and wants. The need is we need to travel to our work or, to a doctor's office. And then there's, I want to go play in the mud. Kind of philosophy. I want to go for a long drive when the leaves are pretty. I want to go and, visit my Aunt Edna, so, some of these things, in the circular city don't exist, based upon how we've written a story and things like that. You can't just wander out in the world. You can, but it's completely different. And so we come back to the holodeck kind of, philosophy. And if you're a person that likes to do off-roading or stuff, you like to feel the vehicle, you like to have the experience of it, but it goes beyond that. If it's your Jeep or it's your, your Toyota, off-road vehicle or whatever, you want to, that vehicle inside and out. So how it drives in the environment is just as important as the experience to a lot of these folks. And so, immersive technology. We have some of it. It doesn't really hold a candle when it comes to dealing with some of those little tidbits of feeling the vehicle. I know you brought some things up, yesterday. Oh, well, we have some neat things you can wear that make your hands feel warm if you're supposed to touch something warm or cold. They have some sensory perception type, augmented reality or virtual reality, things, but or some of the ones you're shooting, when you're shooting, I feel the remote shakes a little bit. So you feel like the gun's going off or whatever. But when it comes to some of these other ones, it'd be really cool if I built my own vehicle in this immersive reality. And based on how I made that, with my own way I would create it, it drives a certain way. And it's not something that's just guessed. It's programmed individually for that person. And I know that's really far out there, but, in my mind, that's the only way I see people digging into immersive reality and not wanting to still own, a gas powered vehicle and going out and playing in the mud, for example. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, for the circular city, we talked about the want as opposed to the needs and the necessity, the want side, leisure side. So we thought about, I guess, our holodeck version would be either an immersive arcade, vacation arcade, leisure arcade, stuff that you like to do as a hobby or something. We mentioned during the agriculture, you like culinary cooking. Like I said, you need to eat, but what if you just want to cook or want to learn how to cook something or make something? That could be part of the arcade. Like I said, right? Paraphrase. I'm calling our holodeck the arcade, basically. So you would create, and like I said, there are companies now, there's like I said, it's more of an amusement park thing, but there's a VR, it's called hyper reality. It's a company called The Void, and there's another one called Varjo or Varjo. It's VARJO, and they create a more immersive VR that also has different attachment that you wear a vest and glove.
Mhm.
And the void actually has an environment where you go into it. So if you're playing a game or whatever, if it's supposed to blow up, you actually feel the heat and you actually feel the wind of what you call it. It's very hepatic and makes you feel the experience along with the VR part. So if you're wearing a VR goggle, you can change the environment to whatever you want the environment to be. So that like I said, that'll be like how our immersive arcade could be, to replace those, what's the word I'm looking for? Those things that those testosterone things that makes you want to do stuff like parkour or base jumping or parachuting or all the all those things, to replace that human element of thrill seeking and roller coaster riding and needing to drive fast and NASCAR and rally racing and, as you would say, mudding. Yeah.
I mean, the element of and I've also lost the word too, but having that feeling of exhilaration, that's the word. I think I jokingly said the other day, no one's felt exhilaration from reading a book unless they were immersed in it so deeply. I mean, maybe someone has, but most people find exhilaration from being immersed with sound or visual or audio or physical experience, So it could be simple as the difference between riding a bike in a video game and riding a bike in reality. There's two different experiences there. One's visually fun. You could get some level of exhilaration from the video game, but nothing can compete with you doing the same thing on a real bike. The difference is there's danger involved. You can still have problems that, there's still risk. And when risk goes higher, people have a higher level of exhilaration, So the challenge is how do you trigger your mind in a immersive virtual environment at a transportation level, for them to feel that risk enough that it triggers that feelings that they're looking to have, and that's really what it comes down to, That's what kicks in the adrenaline and makes you smile when you've conquered it, and so forth and so on. So well, let's switch gears for a second. We're going to medical because we decided to do a double topic here, didn't we? Richard, do you really think people are going to be sick in the future? I think that you have an opinion on that.
Well, it's funny because when I was writing the story, I just totally skipped over. Like I said, there's injuries and stuff in our game story and stuff. I totally skipped over it, and Stephen had brought up, medical. I didn't think about that. I just assumed like Starship Troopers or Demolition Man or those movies where, and like I said, even Star Trek, I don't remember anyone being in a hospital. So yeah, it just surprised me, and I had to actually add it into the story. Like I just assumed there would be like a very global drones coming in with supplies and stuff, and it would have stuff like first aid stuff that would help you in a drone, or bots that would come and just cuts and you antibiotics and give you a shot, and here's the pill, and and everything's okay right now. And we didn't talk about this when we did the prep, is that in the future, I guess if we have sustainable agriculture and food is 3D printed meat and all that stuff, wouldn't that help the health be better, because you're actually creating food that's actually good for you? So that'll help with the health part. But like I said, I didn't in like I said, my medical background, I didn't see. I thought the trend was towards more home health and telehealth and stuff like that, where you don't have. I don't see, except for maybe the critical care and where you're at the end of life kind of thing, where you actually need a hospital and like a traditional hospital or medical center. I see like home health and telemark where medical comes to you. I'm sick, I'm at my home, and either bots or drones or like I said, even like a virtual screen of a doctor can be anywhere, would take care of you. So that's probably why I just, in the back of my mind, I like left it out of the story, because I thought everybody's just going to be, that was just an assumed thing. So yeah, so when you added it on, I said, okay, we need to add that to transportation, because I still can break my leg, I guess, in the future. So I need to transport. So that's part of the transportation part of it. And yeah. And
Right.
yeah. But like I said, like illnesses and disease and heart conditions, I think will I would hope, I don't know how far in the future generation, but like I said, if food is more controlled and it's more nutritional and not bad for you, and we solve the air quality in our circular city,
Mhm.
that I think the health illness and disease wise should be better, is what I'm optimistic about. But
Yeah, we looked at levels, you made a lot of good points there. I mean, obviously home health, that's become a big thing, more now so than in the past, but and even in the past, it was home health. I mean, that's all you had. The doctor came to you, plain and simple. But in our current modern world, home health, thinking about how people should, exercise better, understand how to take care of minor things like cuts and bruises, I think in the future, you'll have more of those things. There's going to be more types of machines or apps or knowledge shared, that basic first aid type things are more readily available for people that haven't really taken first aid. Like you mentioned to me, like a video that says this is how you, take care of a wound correctly. How do you clean it, and so forth and so on. So I looked at it from home health individual, and then home health with help. So like your drone idea, where a drone or a doctor comes on a screen or something like that, and they actually provide the extra things. Like, let's say you need to have you need stitches. You don't necessarily have to go to the hospital at that point to have stitches, if something came there and did it for you, or took care of it. Or there's a device that does it for you. Just put it on your arm, if that's where your cut is, and it does the work it's supposed to. And the last one, and I've seen this in a lot of sci-fi things. Passengers, the movie, was one of the ones I was most intrigued by, their medical scenarios. But they had a very sophisticated bed that the person lay down in, and it would take care of all the major things. It would scan the person. It would say you have the following issues and diseases, and would go through and start to take care of the person in the manner it needed to be taken care of. So that would end up in the hospital type scenario, where we're not necessarily utilizing just doctors, but we're using a technology to do scanning and actually do the preventative medicine right there. If you haven't seen that movie, it's a great movie. But that specific part really was really well thought out. Some might be a little far-fetched based on some of the prognoses that thing came up with, how they got treated, but who knows. I still feel like there's still, you still have tiers, and I think that the tiers spread out more as people become more knowledgeable, or there's other technologies that come and help you. Less people have to travel to get to a medical scenario, which does improve health. A lot of times, when someone's injured, it's better to leave them be and have the professional come to you, versus trying to get them to go to the professional. You can actually injure them more trying to get them to the hospital than you would leaving them in an area that's of course safe, but allows them not to get injured more trying to go from point A to point B. So
yeah. And the other subject we didn't talk about is biomedical and 3D printing and cloning. So we'll be able to actually replace body parts, and there's already companies working on 3D printed joints and ligaments and stuff like that. And of course, the whole, we need a new kidney or transplants, where we could actually clone or actually grow or 3D print actual organs in the future. So that's something that
Right.
It seems far-fetched now, but you know, I never thought I'd have a computer in my hand in the 70s. So
This is true. Of course, I thought I was in a flying car in the 80s when I watched Back to the Future, but that's neither here or there.
true. Yeah.
Well, that personal home monitoring system, we're talking about, that's really our next segment here.
Mhm.
There has been a huge jump in the last 5 years on personal health monitoring. Most recent one I saw was a ring that athletes can wear, and it literally tells the trainers exactly how much they've exerted, how much they've worked out that day, how their eating habits, so forth and so on, like everything to
Mhm.
improve. The Apple Watch has some of those features. There's other, obviously Fitbit has their own version, and there's plenty, many or more things that we have no knowledge of, but do similar stuff. And it is something where people are always very conscious of how they feel. They want to feel well, they want to look good. um, the vanity of it actually helps with the actual principle of it. But even in the future, jokingly said, going back to Hal, or going back to some other sci-fi movies where they're like, uh, you know, Mr. X, you seemed agitated today. Maybe you need to calm down. Your blood pressure is X, and it would really read it off with nothing connected to the person at all. They just did speech pathology to understand how that person was feeling to a certain degree. I mean, that was the underlying theme of the moment in that movie. But
Mhm.
the that also I don't think is too far fetched.
Mhm.
Understanding how people which mental health is a huge component here, mentally are feeling, to identify how they should, you know, look at things a little differently, based upon their tone, their understanding, but also monitoring some of the basic things, blood pressure, um, temperature, etc.
Mhm. Yeah, I think yeah, because you mentioned mental health. That's even currently right now. We have the current thing right now that's the most popular apps are about mental health and spiritual, uh,
Mhm.
like yoga, exercise type apps. Um, and I think, like I said, in the future, that's going to be something that, um, wherever the line is, where you have to be licensed or not licensed, but
Mhm.
you know um, and AI can replace those repetitive sort of things that therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists need to tell to help people. So those can be replaced. But like I said, we're set aside the legal and licensing part of it, but um, just having an app or AI that can you know help you with your mental health and spiritualness and actual exercise and all that kind of stuff. It's already here, and like I said, it's only going to get better in the future. So.
Going back to the framework of our city.
Mhm.
Kaylee is supposed to is supposed to be monitoring the inhabitants of the city and understanding what their needs are. Um, that bridges into preventative health a lot. Some of the things you just talked about, but knowing, how someone is normally, and everyone's normal is different. But knowing how that person is normally and understanding if there's a change so that you could be more preventative, that could be the way, you breathe, to, the way you walk and how your attitude, your temper, how you feel. And having something that monitors yourself to keep you in tune, I think is a pretty neat concept. Now that goes back to our transportation kind of conversation. Do people accept it? Do people like that idea? Because currently, in our current state, all of these things we've talked about are being monitored at a perceived individual level with your own personal device that you personally control, kind of like your car, you know. And what happens when you kind of let go and let a system actually do that and become like your big mother, kind of concept, where that sentient type activity occurs, automatically without you really asking it to do it,
Mhm. Yeah.
so
And one of the
think
things, go ahead.
things for the future.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things with the fictitious AI and Kaylee, one of the subliminal things as you're playing the game and learning location as you're putting information in the fictitious game, it it can monitor how long you play, how fast you play. If you're playing at 2 a.m. as opposed to 2 p.m., it can know that too. So it can kind of like monitor your health. Are you getting enough sleep? Subliminally, kind of, monitor how you feel and ask you questions in between.
Mm,
Especially if you've been on the computer for 12 hours
mm,
as opposed to 4 hours three times a week. There's a difference in that. So yeah, and yeah, like the circadian rhythm of your sleep, and are you sleeping? Are you exercising? It can ask you to, so yeah. When's the last time you exercised? Why don't you take a walk down the street, kind of thing? It can suggest stuff like that for your health benefit, kind of thing. Yes.
well, that's a lot of stuff today.
So,
Of course, please subscribe to our channel. Give us
yeah.
comments. We love our comments. And let us know what you think. Let us know what we should have for a future podcast. And thanks for joining us, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we set the platform. We want you to tell the story. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Peace out, everybody.
Thank you for watching our podcast. Subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you think and what you would like us to talk about next. Don't forget to check out our website at prefectureisp.com.